Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Budget Advisory Board special meeting on Wednesday, June 10th, 2026. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Bowker,
Here.
Mr. Calais,
Here.
Mr. DiGirolamo, Mr. Jeffress,
Yes, here.
Ms. Metellus Thompson,
Here.
Ms. Milroy,
Here.
Mr. Ortolani, Ms. Perriman Jones.
You have a quorum.
Okay. Chairman Brown's present. We have a quorum.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Chair would entertain a motion to allow Linda Malker to join virtual. By Jason, seconded by Olivia. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Linda, welcome, virtual. Hope you're feeling better and we send our best wishes to you.
Yes.
No, thank you, Chair and Board. And I guess just, I won't go into too much detail, but it's not how I anticipated participating, continuously, but I'm recovering from post-concussive syndrome. So it just makes attending in person difficult for me right now. I was in a bad accident a couple months ago.
Well, we understand, and we're just glad to have you here participating. I see Max is now entering the room, so we put them in. Okay. Give Max just a second to settle in, and then I'll start with my opening remarks and we'll dive in. Because the goal is to have the special meeting that's dedicated to the targeted assignment presentation for the city commission meeting workshop, joint workshop, just it's Tuesday. There's been some changes since we last met as far as the time structure for the city commission starting their conference meeting. Originally, conference meetings in the past start at 1:30. They're now starting at 1 o'clock. Our budget, the joint budget workshop is scheduled to start at 12:30. They did understand that they're just moving forward with our shop, that there would be some overlay time-wise, because to try to get everything that has to be done in a 30-minute window is not possible. Having met with staff earlier and getting some feedback from the commission, I think that window of opportunity is about 45 minutes. So we're looking at between about 1:15, maybe pushing it to 1:20, but I think they're going to want to start their workshop as soon as possible after that 1:15, 1:20 mark, or more like around 1:15. But we'll just have to see how it goes. So with that, we have to be mindful of the wishes of the commission. We're looking at the time frame of what has to be covered in that 45-minute window is our presentation, targeted assignments, the Stratcom and OMB doing a presentation on the preliminary city budget. So that's 15 minutes for Stratcom or OMB, and then Stratcom 15 minutes because the commission at the last workshop directed that the Budget Advisory Board work with Stratcom on public outreach, public education on the property tax referendum. So they want some involvement of the Budget Advisory Board for that. I know that's not what you like hearing, Olivia, but that's what we got to figure out. We got 15 minutes, 15 to 20-minute presentation on targeted. It's not ideal, but a lot of it has transpired and changed since our last meeting and the commission meeting, where property tax reform is going to be on the ballot referendum now. And we'll hear later this evening what those impacts are going to be to the budget moving forward in 2028. So to recap our presentation, that I will be presenting is about a 15 to 20-minute window. Olivia, you did a presentation, condensed version. Max, you did the 3-up or and so we have to work as a team to either decide which presentation or do we do a hybrid and then condense that hybrid into a 20-minute presentation. I can tell you that having observed the city commission, they do like some presentations of PowerPoints with some graphs in them, some visuals so that they get the idea, but that we can also have bullet points to go along with those graphs. That's the preference of the commission. Rich, you're up here. Yeah. So having said that, staff, did I cover that fairly well? I mean, we have to, that's even cutting the city manager and her preliminary budget presentation of 15 minutes in OMB. It's really going to be short, but for City Manager Williams to do that, and then Stratcom is an important issue on the property tax that the commission wants to hear too, and talk to the Budget Advisory Board about. So.
No, so there's no more that I'd add. So the time, we always knew that the time was gonna start at 12:30 because of commission conflicts. And moving forward, every meeting beginning with this meeting, the commission has decided to start their conference meetings at 1 p.m. So that's actually the reason why the meeting is so short. And because of the property tax issue that came up on the last meeting, the commission asked that we add that to the joint meeting. So that's sort of the reason that we come to the shortened presentation that we need for the meeting, as the chair indicated.
And it was not any design, it's just how the chips kind of fell in. So I know you, Olivia, you had a question or a comment.
I believe that the work that I tried to champion and the approach, and I've worked a lot in the past 8 months, the analytics that I shared with you in December, trying to get a collegial approach as a BAB should be presented, condensed. That's why I did some work despite the surgery 2 weeks ago, and I sent it to OMB. It's 6 slides of content, a few sentences per slide, per subject, and that every board member with their subject matter would have 1 sentence. And I think that can be contained in a reasonable amount of time. I would add that I don't recall, Chairman, that according to the minutes, last time, because we are at the 11 hour, we have less than a week to make our mind and know what we present. And I thought we had an understanding and sort of a consensus towards a message that was in my high-level executive summary that I prepared, and then I condensed that. Max submitted another framework. We can comment on that. But I think it's very difficult at the last minute, less than 5 days, 6 days before the presentation, to change our mind or do what I called an ugly baby, an hybrid. So I personally feel that the condensed version is manageable. I feel that timing should not dictate content and the added value from the board at this most important juncture of the budget. I think that's our time to shine. If we're going to deliver a recommendation that is solid and has substance, I don't think it should be the voice of staff. I think it should be the voice of the resident through BAB delegates. And that's what I tried to convey and build in those 6 slides. I suggested to MB, and I wish that would have been conveyed, but I'm doing it now, that beyond this high-level package, which is a few sentences, we have a pile of analytics that support, that show the evidence that we covered our assessment and our position. So if there is a reference to affordability and the work that, for instance, Annie did, she could refer to it if such question arise from the commission. So I think a need, for questions asked by commissioners on a specific subject, we can refer to subject matter expert or more detailed analytics. But keeping up to the high level, I personally feel, Chairman Brown, with all due respect to your leadership, that even if you lead that presentation high level, you could have everybody speaks to their subject matter that they worked on. I had some ideas of talking points that I could submit also to my colleagues before next week. One sentence, one bit of data that is essential to our point of view. So that's my contribution. I tried very hard to share that with you and have a teamwork. I think, again, we should have a strong recommendation. If it takes half an hour and it's a pleasure of the commission to extend the time and say it's important enough so that BAB members can actually answer the question of the commission, I think it's worth it, and it shouldn't be dictated by a chrono with 15 seconds top, or the Oscar with the music. That's all I'm going to say.
So, and everyone needs to understand, we had nothing to do with the time change in the time allotment. We thought we had an hour going in. Now we've lost 15 minutes of that hour
I got that.
out of our control, and we can't, in the city manager's preliminary budget has to be presented so that they know going in, because they're gonna have to, by July 1st, set the millage rate and the fire assessment fee, correct? Preliminarily,
July 2nd meeting.
July 2nd meeting. So she has to present, as you can see,
It's very clear.
her document is pretty big too.
I think we can have a compact message as a group of substance and have the high level condensed version in 6 slides of content. And personally, I think the framework and the point of view that we develop through this condensed version is clear. We say there is a lot at stake because we can save money. There are areas of optimization, estimation of revenue. We can probably contemplate some savings on the budget. It doesn't dispense us to consider millage rate increase or decrease, and we show those options. And we show the receipt that go with it.
Okay, so keeping 15-minute in time frame, we have to figure out, which document, can we do a hybrid or not? Or does the board want to go with this presentation or this presentation or a hybrid? It's up to the board. Okay, and I think the best way to dig in is, let's start with, do you want to go first, Olivia, with yours and go through it? And Max?
Yeah, I took the time to see what Max did and appreciate the intent. I'm sure it comes from a good place. However, we don't land on the same recommendation. It's very different. And from the analytics that you probably use from my own analytics that I, produced for 6 months, it seems that the conclusions are very different. It goes towards a stabilization, but then towards 2 millage rate increases that I don't understand how they were established. And there is an area of quantification of the savings through AI, et cetera, that I don't know where the numbers come from, but we can clarify that. What I want to say is I'm not going to produce an hybrid version that I already produced, and my condensed version follows a path that we followed for 6 months, which was a clear path that I thought everybody understood. And the message is empower the city manager to consider drastic optimization, estimation of revenue, and maybe savings and reduction of budgets, not necessarily job cuts, but budgets. Going on a diet, like my husband would say when he thinks that I have too much weight. And then also consider for the city commission, give them some tool that show how we can either give residents relief, a slight relief, like many other municipalities have done in the past 5 years. And we've seen that the school board, the Broward County School Board, and Miami-Dade also went that direction with different sort of government and political colors. So it's not like revolutionary thinking. We can probably go towards that, but giving the commission those tools would be important. I would add that my recommendation also touched on, and I worked hard on this since Martika's number, and I worked with Chief Lamarca's input to know more about the property tax loss impact on what kind of revenue we're gonna miss and how we can further the diet. And I also introduced a sort of framework or give a taste to the city commission, maybe towards July 2nd, but if there is a question, I also introduced some key points about how the city hall, either new building or existing building, could impact the millage rate policy decision. So I try to have a comprehensive approach, and I think that's what BAB should do, and not miss the tax reform, the property tax reform, and the city hall in the conversation, because obviously there are big elements of that. And that's all I'm gonna say.
And Melinda, you were at the last meeting, you brought up that you wanted to look at a good, better, and best type of approach that Max mentioned. What's your thoughts? And then then we'll just go around to all the board members and see what their feeling is on how we want to proceed. But Melinda or Max, you want to take it off?
Yeah. Personally, I don't even have a dog in this fight at this point, because if property tax does reform, that money's gonna end up on people that rent. That's somebody like myself, so that's not necessarily why I did any of this. I don't own a home. I did it as a 3 baskets, good, better, best. This is 3 things that we could submit to staff to say as a recommendation. Chair Brown, actually I created speaking notes, because I figured if anybody was gonna be presenting it would be yourself. So I have speaking notes that literally just touch on all of them. The idea was really just a matter of everything that everybody had submitted before. It was in the best way that I could do it, which was, from a good perspective, it's modest efficiency gains, better is targeted reform, and best is comprehensive reform. And all the statistics that are in there and the graphs that I input were all sourced from Stantec and other data sources. So, I mean.
Melinda, I'll start with you on comments and we'll just go around the group and then we'll figure out what the consensus is quickly. And then we'll focus in on what the final outcome of that consensus is.
Yeah, sorry. And I'm not sure that I had commented on good, better, or best before, but and so Chair Brown, just to summarize, your comments are basically, are we just basically commenting now on the approach, like which presentation we're giving, or I guess
Right.
what?
We're doing I will start out as chair of the BAB based on what we have been working on for the past, as Oliver mentioned, 8 months on the insights and recommendations of the targeted assignments that we each were voluntarily agreed to work on. And that's what we only have 15, 20 minutes at the max. And then following that presentation, the city manager, Williams, will then give our preliminary budget and then turn it over to OMB, I believe, to go into a little more detail. They'll have another 15 minutes. And then Stratcom will talk about their approach on property tax and reform. And I believe Daphne will give an update on the effect of the legislation, and then the Stratcom approach to informing the community of what it actually means on the property tax referendum. So we have that in that 45 to 50 minute time window to accomplish all this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my concern is just that we have a cohesive, I guess I'm not following like which, I guess, exactly how we essentially have the 15 minutes for our presentation, and I've seen a couple different presentations, provided. And I guess, I think I'm not sure that we can have, well, unfortunately, I will not be there, but I'm not sure that we have time to have each member present a little bit of what they did. I just don't know if that's realistic.
If it's a sentence, I don't think that's a big deal. It's more about teamwork. That was the intent, but we can have one single voice and the substance is key here. It's not
Yeah.
the style of presentation.
Right. And I guess, so are we essentially trying, I mean, I saw that the city had done a revised workshop presentation, and then, I see Olivier's and Max's, and I guess, I just don't, my concern is I just don't want it to come across as disjointed. So I think we need to decide on a very clean, decide on one. I think I think it's difficult to have so many presentations. I think we just, I don't have the answer, I guess, but that's my feedback.
And you bring up an excellent point. That's my concern as well. I think, and probably everyone on this board's thinking it, so we don't come away or looking disjointed.
Yes.
There's a lot of material, and quite honestly, it's impossible to cover everything in the 15-minute time window, but it is what it is. But our goal is not to be disjointed. Hit them with the material that they need to take away so that they have a clear understanding of what we've been working on the last 8 months. And how we get there is we're going to have to decide that within the next 30 minutes. But I think everyone's in agreement on what we have to accomplish. Okay. We'll just start with Melissa then. I mean, if there's, did I summarize that well? And then just tell how.
I think you did. Yeah, I agree. I think we have to come forward to the commission with one voice. I personally don't think we should all be giving a 1-minute overview of what we've talked about. I think, we can cover that in one of the presentations, whichever one we seem to agree on how we're moving forward. But I think, Bill, you should be the spokesperson on behalf of the BAT. I am also curious because I saw the report that was sent out by Marty Care's office, and how that, I think we just got it recently, right? How that affects, because and I noticed I think it was your report, Olivia, you talk about real estate development being down, except his report really didn't show that. It showed an increase, I think, of like 6% or just under.
See, if you're putting me, my research showed that it was going down structurally for the past 10 years, not necessarily going this year. I'm not an oracle.
No, I'm just.
It was better
in
than
here
expected.
Right. So how does that factor into, what we're gonna be discussing? Because that's new information that, was brought forth, right? And, and I like Max's presentation, and I do think it's clear when you have a good, better, best, it shows the commission, no matter what the information is we're showing. It, to me, it's very clear. You're saying, okay, if we do this, then this, if you do this, then this. So I really do like that. I like, the event fees that you talk about, which we have discussed, and holding it like at a 5% or whatever, that it's fair for everybody, but not discouraging to people coming in. So I think we have to really, it's almost like you have to, in the millage rate, where have we landed as a board? I don't know that we have really had that,
We
right?
have to have that discussion in our next meeting.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, actually, if I may, in my analytics, I know it was 35 slides, but I covered that. And in terms of what does it mean for the millage rate, I did it for the ad valorem revenue loss with two hypotheses, 5.5% or 7%, according to Chip LaMarca, and city managers Williams numbers. And I did that for City Hall to show that we're showing them how those big money drivers can impact their decision on millage rate. So there were options presented. We don't have to present them before July 2nd for City Hall, but we can give a flavor of it. And I think it was in the high condensed version of it. My problem personally with the good, better, best, I don't remember, is that it's not a neutral. Doing good in the first level is not really going drastic and saying, hey, we need a diet and we need to save money. I think the message is very misaligned with what I've been working and towards and sharing with you guys for the past 6 months. Affordability, we say something about affordability, but then we don't give any relief to residents or any hope of relief, except for from the governor's tax reform, which is not coming from the city level. So I'm having a hard time reconciling those two directions. I think they're different recommendations.
Okay.
And I don't know that there is, depending on what happens in Tallahassee and if it go, I don't know that that's considered relief. I mean, just because property tax is going away does not necessarily mean that that's gonna be relief for.
Well, actually it translates into a
Resident.
$2,000 on my homestead exemption for my own house. So that I call that relief.
I think that might be the case, but I think just personally, what you're gonna find from the county and the city, if there's a loss, I mean, I just see we're gonna end up with fees down the road that that's just, I don't see it as relief, but
There is a
that's, we're not gonna
solution.
get into Tallahassee right now.
Melissa, there is the solution, and it's try to save money on the budget and not growing further every year.
So,
Yeah, I think when you talk about affordability, and it's been brought up that if this passes from Tallahassee, the burden is gonna be on the commercial property owners and people like Max, anybody that's renting. It's gonna have a bigger effect on the lower income population if they're renting and it's passed down to them, but that's just my personal.
and you're correct, it has went down the past 5-6 years. I mean, and not to take thunder out of the city manager's presentation, but we, in 2022, the increase that 1 year was 12.95%. Then the following year it went to 11.34. Last year it's trending downward at 7.16. The increased assessed value.
Increasing at less of an increasing rate, or is it decreasing?
Decreasing. And you'll see that if
The
you
rate
look,
of
if you look.
increase is decreasing, or it's actually decreasing?
It's increasing at a decreased rate.
Correct,
Yes,
sort of like
so
how
it's
people look
lowering
at
it.
inflation and say it's
Right.
decreasing when.
And the preliminary for last year was over 8%, and it actually came in at 7.1. This year is projected at 6, what?
It came in at 7.36 in the final.
Yeah,
So right now we're at 7.16, but it could go down into the
it
sixes.
could beat into the sixes. Mid sixes possibly. Or even lower. We don't know. So it has, and that is based on what throws that up historically is new construction. That gets that number up into the high 8, 9, 10, 11%. And we've not seen that new construction. It's decreasing slowly. So that point's right. But in order to move on, Samantha, what's your thoughts?
My thought is, I'm sorry I won't be there on the 16th, but taking care of my mom, she's a little elderly now, so it's on me. The one with where he says all of us say something or speak, that we may not have time for that right now. So I don't think that's good. I like the good, better, best, very detailed, to the point. Also the other packet, that's 15 minutes. It's smaller, it gets to the point. It says what we need. This is one that's in there too, right? Based on this one, it gets to the point and it says what we need to do.
For clarification, what is going to be going out as backup material for our conference? Can it include all three, or is that going to be confusing, or what's?
So I don't believe any information will be able to be published because we're publishing tonight. You all will decide what you want the presentation to be, and whatever the one presentation is, staff can work with whoever we're delegated to work with is typically the chair to finalize that presentation. And I believe the thought was we would send it as extra information before the meeting.
Yeah, just to clarify, you know, even if we publish the commission for budget workshop agenda tonight or tomorrow, we can always add and circulate that to the commission and have that available on the city's website for the public to view. So we're not limited necessarily by the initial publishing date of the commission agenda.
And then after the presentation, each board member has the latitude to meet individually with their commissioner that appointed them and go into more detail of the document or documents that want to present. As long as it's coming from a unified voice of the BAB. So we're on agreement
Yeah, that's-
versus personal feelings.
I think the biggest issue with this whole thing. I'll go when you come back. We're doing.
All right, are you done? Okay, thank you. And then we'll come back to Rich.
Go ahead, Rich.
Hey, Rich.
Let's hear you.
No, I'm just trying to figure out what we're trying to accomplish. Like, I know that Olivia is very passionate about this whole thing. I just feel like we created an entirely separate, not necessarily redundant, but we're like creating our own analysis of the budget with a lot of positions that are in here that I don't necessarily agree with, or ABP as a whole don't agree with. And these are all things that some of these we have to make a motion agree with together. So there's good, better, best. And like Olivia said, well, what's good, better, best? I might disagree. You might, this is the most palatable, I think, clearly, but the positions in here don't necessarily rep the BAP. But, and no offense, but yours don't necessarily either. So if you disagree with him, but maybe everybody does, and then we have to have a whole nother conversation and agree on what good, better, best is. So now we're basically going through each department within a budget and creating this entirely different lane of almost a second BAB doing different things. And it's just sort of getting confusing and convoluted and made big. And I don't understand what we're trying to accomplish or convey to the commission.
Can I respond to that? Can I
Of
offer
course,
my?
I'm asking the question.
So
I'm not sure.
I think that's exactly what the BAP should be doing. We're not supposed to rubber stamp the city staff's recommendation or thinking. I think we deserve our own thinking, our own voice, our own analytics, and our own takeaways. So whichever version is more palatable in terms of style, you have to differentiate that from the overall message. The overall message is we are representing the residents. We are advisory board to the city commission, not to staff. And we can say things that staff doesn't necessarily can say or will say. And that's where I was trying to exert to champion an approach for the past 6 months.
But isn't that a little bit redundant with what we take in what the staff puts together as a budget and we analyze that and they present to us. And then we take those findings, some of them we agree to with emotion or whatever else, take that to the commission, and then we take certain positions. I just feel like this is creating a whole secondary and other carve out of that. I'm just having a hard time saying.
It's a high level
Figuring out.
recommendation. The first slide after the diagnostic on my version, it says, A, B, C, D, E. One, our city budget is facing a
Okay.
turning point. B, slowing of real estate development, potential state reform of property tax, and macroeconomic uncertainty with higher cost of goods, combined with slowing revenue, all lead to deep fiscal challenges. C, budget reform and recalibration of salaries and fringe benefits.
Where is all that coming from?
It's the recommendation and summary from all the things that I've lined up in my last presentation that was
But is
35
it coming
slides.
from you or is it coming from the board?
Well, I submitted it to the board. I was waiting for feedback and
So I feel like this has taken its own thing and it's gotten big and I don't know that everyone's on the same
I'm
page.
trying to bring it out to you and you can decide if you disagree, but let's present arguments back and forth, not I disagree. Let's get to the substance of it then.
But if we present arguments back and forth, then we're just fussing them.
No, I know,
And then-
no, I'm talking about now.
Someone's
I'm talking about
creating
now.
a secondary thing here that I'm appointed by the commissioner to be on the BAB. And I love your project and your enthusiasm, but it's creating an entirely separate board, an entirely separate group of arguments. an entirely separate carve out of everyone's time. I just wanna make sure that everyone's on the same page, and then I still honestly am not very clear on what we're trying to accomplish with this, and then what communication we're trying to give to the commission so that they're not confused by what we're doing. That's what I'm trying to
I
figure
failed to communicate it because I've tried for 6 months and I think it was pretty clear. To me, there was no good, stabilize and don't save money and we're good and we'll increase the fire fee and the millage rate. That was not the position, that was not the direction. So I was very clear from the beginning, maybe it's not
But aren't all these concepts in the budget themselves that we review with each department head?
Yes.
Not sure, because we have.
That's why I'm saying it's sort of creating a redundancy in its own carve out, and it's making things more convoluted and less clear. Not saying that was your intention, but that's what it's doing.
It's a challenge or a different
personally, and that's what I
view.
feel like is happening.
It's a different view, it's a
And
challenge.
I know you're struggling because you're like people aren't getting it. I'm getting what's going on. I'm not necessarily completely into it.
Okay.
And
I
then
will stop pushing.
So
I'm not, it's just me. It's just Rich saying. I'm just saying that's
Not
where,
just
that's
you.
what I'm getting.
It's not just you,
That's all.
I agree.
Yeah. Annette,
I need.
Anita, I mean, I'm
Sorry, I didn't
sorry.
mean to take a lot of time. Just trying
That's
to.
fine.
Okay.
Can we perhaps have an outline as to what it is we want to say? And then figure out how we wanna say it, because we have two different presentations. Olivier's and Max, so again, your voice, Olivier's voice and Max's voice, can we decide on what it is that we want to say as a group and then figure out which
That's
part of this
that's what's
presentation-
gotta have to happen because
Can we do that
we have-
before we decide on which presentation? Because right now, I'm not
That's
sure
my
we
point.
know what we wanna say. I'm
Right.
not sure what it is we are saying. We are choosing a report, but based on what?
Max, you've already spoken. I'll give Jason and then we'll go back and figure out. Given that window of opportunity that we have to say what we wanna say,
Can we decide?
then we have to decide how to say it.
Bunch of comments. I think I'm largely sort of thinking the way Rich is. But one other thing I just wanted to say at the outset is we've heard a few comments of Max's version or Olivier's. We're not choosing among them. We can merge, pick the best, et cetera. So I just have heard that several times, one or the other. So I think we need to stay away from that. But to your points, I think it's been agreed, but I do think I would echo that Chairman Brown needs to give the presentation, and just the idea of all of us participating is nice. But when one person hands the baton to the other, there's wasted time. Some of us are good, powerful speakers. Some of us are more timid speakers. It won't go well despite the good intent. So I do agree that the chairman has to give the presentation. And largely, I think what has happened is that Olivier has done a ton of work. He's done more work than anybody in doing research. So in that respect, he has been out in front of everybody. But I think Rich is right that Olivier has a vision that everyone is not necessarily agreeing with. And I know Olivier has also condensed the presentation, but even in slide 2, I see a ton of the 7 points are really complicated.
No, the
Yeah.
main slide is the second one, which is our high level recommendation. And if we stick to that, not the diagnostic, the second.
So
Okay, and my final comment is just, I tried to suggest this last week, there are some things, that make me a little uncomfortable. I don't think we're bloated as a government in terms of our budget. I think we have challenges, risks, a structural deficit. So I kind of agree with what Rich was saying, that Olivier has done a ton of admirable work, but he's maybe ahead of us in his own vision.
And to your point on bloated, I don't know if anyone I saw where someone asked the state's chief financial officer about Fort Lauderdale budget. And they are very happy with Fort Lauderdale's budget. And how, Rich, you're shaking your head.
Yeah.
But did I summarize that well? You said, so that goes to your point. It's not, that's coming from the state who was kind of like the Doge guy for the state, looking at coming in and looking. So when asked, they said they have been looking at Fort Lauderdale and they have no issues with Fort Lauderdale's budget. They don't feel it's out of line. I think partially due to the fact we've kept the millage rate, we've lived within our means. And so that's a positive. So having heard all the comments, the chair feels like the consensus is, let's figure out what we want to say based upon looking at perhaps as a starting point, because we only have 15 minutes. If we have to run over, we might, but on a special meeting, but 15 minutes to summarize, starting out with the summary recommendations. Is that agreeable with everyone? Just let's walk down through those 5 points, get in agreement, or tweak it if we have to. So we all know the city budget is facing some turning points. Let me quickly just give you some numbers that if property tax reform referendum passes in the first year's budget, it will have an effect of a loss of 17 million. First year of the 28. Then the following year, it will be 27.3 million. And those numbers are based upon what the county assessors given the city. And that was based on FY 26 dollars. So next year, it could increase that 17 million, but it's a pretty, you go up or down a little bit. But 17 is what the city's using OMB for planning assumptions with Stantec. Stantec will be giving a presentation. That will be the first item on the conference meeting following the joint workshop. They're going to give their projections like they do for FY 27 budget. So we all know we're at a turning point. We're seeing revenues like ad valorem and other funds are more and more reliant upon increased basic taxes and fees to all the residents. We agree that that's a fair and honest statement.
There are analytics behind that. It's not just a statement from Olivier. You have the slides in the analytics appendix that support that. It's not an opinion. It's numbers.
Yeah.
It's reading numbers.
Which slide is that?
So I didn't print all the slides of the appendix.
So we could put that slide in for that discussion.
There are like 2 or 3 that support that, but basically the increase of the funds, sanitation, fire, building permits, utility taxes have increased. And there is the history from what I went from 2023 to 2026. And then there is the forecast to 2030. And all of that shows an increase that keeps increasing. So that's a burden on the residents directly. So that's a fact. That's not an opinion.
But like building permit fees, I mean, staff salary, staff time, those increase. And those.
I'm not saying they are not
Yeah.
good reasons, but that's a fact that it is increasing. So the point of A is turning point. And B is we have a structural long-term challenge dilemma, because if we address it for this year and Stantec says, oof, we're out of the woods for this year. Remember, Stantec projection showed that 5 years from now, we'll bring a deficit back or it will get worse.
Has city staff done an analysis on that conundrum at all? Is that something that you guys look at? If it's an out.
Yeah, so we look at revenue growth, we look at expenditure growth every year. That's part of our Stantec analysis that occurs. So Stantec will be presenting the 10-year long-range financial sustainability model at the 1 o'clock meeting that afternoon.
I think what Olivia is saying as fact, but the remedy to that, and then the what keeps you up at night, that could be something on the city staff side that might keep you up at night, and then it's something that we're actively thinking about. I just want to make sure our position is aligned with or informed with, like, what's the remedy? What's the remedy that you're saying we need to say to the commission?
For the moment, I'm in the problem, the turning point. Why? Why? Is because we have a structural challenge. By the way, Stantec projection Yvette, we had them up to last time. And those numbers are in slide. I have a slide number, but if you're not looking at the analytics part, but if you want to refer to slide number 29 of the analytics, it has the Stantec, and it shows that unless we raise 0.55 increase in interest rate for fiscal year 2027, it will keep us afloat only up to 2034. Now, if it gets better with the update of Stantec, that's great, but I don't think it's going to disappear. So the point is we have a structural challenge. So we need to do something drastic or serious for the long term, otherwise the problem will come back 3 years from now.
Are these conversations happening from the city staff and to the commission?
So that's the intent of what we do at the afternoon meeting. So every year as part of budget development, we look at the assumptions, we true up the assumptions, we modify them for the next 10 years. And so we're going to be presenting that fund by fund with the commission, along with the rates that are needed in order to stay sustainable for the general fund, for the water sewer fund, the stormwater fund, building fund. We go through fund by fund and give that long-term perspective for the commission.
So then, like, that's what I'm trying to figure out. What's the message to the commission? We want to understand that city staff's doing this, not that it's a redundancy, but this is what they're doing. It's not like they're not doing this, it's not like they're not aware, I'll say. But maybe as a commission, we say, hey, this as a BAB is something that we want to keep an eye on, so please press city staff more about it or whatever it is. But I don't think we're bringing something to light that the folks who make the budget aren't already bringing to light. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page. We don't want to say something, we want to all be on the same page in this room.
Agreed, and we're saying there is a structural challenge, and that's the situation we're in. Therefore, those two A and B are the where we start from, the diagnostic, which picture we have, and the dynamic picture that it's showing. And then C, D, and E are more towards what our recommendation would lead to. So maybe we can get to that.
I mean, just a comment about B. I think maybe the language should be tempered a little bit because words like inevitably worry me, but also knowing a bit about revenue forecasting and trends. I can think of times in the past when things dashed our expectations. For example, nobody anticipated the dot-com boom of the 90s, which briefly gave us federal surpluses. And everybody thought we have deficits as far as I can see. For this brief blip, things got better. And then, of course, they got worse again. COVID, everybody thought finances were collapsing. 2 years later, they were doing quite well. So things are risky, we're facing dangers, but
So we
inevitable.
can say not inevitable, but could or be likely. I mean,
Yeah.
not gonna, the words can be changed.
Yeah.
The meaning is the same. We are in a situation where we need to get serious about the balancing act, which is becoming more challenging, even with the greatest city manager. And I think the message is not really, it's not being provocative than saying that as bad.
Okay. So, given what's been said, tweak some of the language on point A.
Point B.
What's that?
He was talking about point B.
being like, we face a risk of.
Remove inevitably, likely, maybe, will likely, or could lead to deep fiscal challenges. Or look like it's gonna, with those projections. We have a good surprise, bravo.
So A leads to B for that.
If A and B go together as a diagnostic, the current picture of the situation, which is not all rosy and fine.
And I think when Sandtech gives their presentation, we might see
Can
some of that.
update and we can have a
Right.
surprise.
Okay, I think you're gonna see on C what we're talking about. I think with the city manager's preliminary budget presentation, you're going to see some budget reform, correct? Is that a safe assumption? I mean, through
Yes,
some,
there
you're
are
cutting back some positions already. There's some attrition going to be built in this.
Yes, a couple strategies, preliminary strategies.
Yeah. So if you've not had the opportunity to take in a deep dive of that got sent out earlier on this document, please do so. But I think she's really working towards addressing some of those budget reform and as far as salaries and fringe benefits, the majority of that is dictated by union contracts. 3 unions, police, fire, and municipal employees. 4, what's the 4th one?
Teamsters and Federation,
So, yeah. And what percentage of the overall is it? Is
over 80%.
over 80%. So it's hard to, come and start cutting salaries and contracts with creating that's not our job.
It's not, but we can also point to the fact that fringe benefits have increased beyond the salaries and also to the structure of it. If you have more high salaries than low salaries, it costs more and it keeps getting more and more expensive every year because those people are more senior, they're getting paid more. If we have more juniors and entry level getting to middle management, and we have more of those, it costs less to the city overall in fringe in salaries and fringe benefits. So it's maybe taking a look at the structure of all of that.
But then it goes hand in hand is if you have lower paying salary jobs, to be able to attract and affordability to live even within the city limits or the county is.
I agree, and
challenge,
it's
yeah.
where affordability needs to be also central to an approach to balancing act and millage rate consideration. So all of that is linked, absolutely. But if you have a lot of chiefs and very few Indians, to use an image, the chiefs are costing a lot and they continue to cost more and more as they get closer to their retirement. Whereas if you have more middle management and you're heavy on the entry level, preparing for the next generation, it costs less in dollars with sometimes a bigger number of employees. So there are different ways. I'm not a scientist and I'm not an economist, but everybody understand that.
The city managers did a lot, right, with reorganizing the structure of the city and the employees. I'm sure you're analyzing this and looking at, are we gonna get too top heavy? Are we too middle management heavy? Or are we neither of the sort? I think we should get clear of what our recommendations will be to the commission. Make sure if they're gonna be in conflict of what the city manager and team are doing, we have that discussion and say, we're the advisory board, we don't advise you doing what you're doing. But I don't think we should make an assumption that they're asleep at the wheel unless we think they are. And then we need to say, hey, you don't know that this is going on and we need to bring this up. Because some of this reads as I think a lot of this, the city's well aware of and the commission may be well aware of, and they have secondary meetings that involve this. And if we're gonna make a definitive recommendation on this, then tell us, what are the definitive recommendations we need to agree on now? Because we only have 2 minutes to do it, and then we would say that to the board. But for us to go to the board and say, hey, are you aware this is going on? I think they have like 2-3 meetings a day or a week about this stuff. It's almost like saying, hey, we have a homeless problem. Like it's the topic of conversation all the time, unless we have a solution different than what they're doing. I just wanna be clear about what this is and how we're gonna present it.
Okay, so the C is more about fringe benefits and our budget, and then through efficiencies and more proactive cost recovery. That can help prepare our city for a stronger long-term financial sustainability. And it's a positive statement towards let's be more aggressive in cost recovery, being opportunistic. And I think a lot of that is happening. We were discussing with Linda Short about the updating the liens fee, and they're doing it. So we're not saying you're not doing your job. I think that's never the intention, and it's certainly not in my
Can
mind.
be as a bad, I'm just saying if it is, we should.
But we
make
can
that-
say we're pointing out to some areas of interest that we think are important for city staff to look into. So it doesn't mean we're criticizing them or saying they're not doing it.
I'm not saying. we
So
can't.
in
I'm
the
just saying
interest
it's
of
going
time,
on.
can we
Figure out what's
say
going on.
we encourage the city commission, the BAB feels and strongly encourages the city commission to prioritize with the city manager, looking at the approach
That's 5 things.
of these
Okay.
5 things.
Great.
That's a message, it's
That's
backed up by
awesome.
everything you've done,
That's
if we
the
can
same.
agree on it.
Okay.
Say, these are the things I think you should prioritize with the city staff and the city manager, that the BAB feels are important.
This is aligned with what we.
And then, again, as you're on the board for a year, if things are going in a direction and we have to make specific recommendation, we can have those conversations in the room with the heads of the department, where we can.
Right.
But to right now go to the city staff and commission as if we have this all figured out, I don't think we're ready, but I think what he just said of summing up the priorities for right now makes sense.
And
Unless everybody disagrees, that's fine too.
we're talking
That's just
about the
what I'm saying.
millage rate, I mean, you know, it'd be nice to have a decrease, but the reality of that happening are not there.
So point D is not, it's not saying we should or we should not. We say millage rate policy change. If it's carefully approached from the overall perspective that we just came from, the dynamics, the diagnostic of the structural challenge, the revenue slowing down, the property tax reform, then let's be careful with the millage rate policy and let's encompass all those dimensions and show that it can go both ways. We can probably, if we save 60 million, and I was very specific in my 6 months, sharing with you all the buckets that we look at and how much, not so ambitious, we could actually optimize or save, not necessarily through, cutting heads and jobs, but it shows that 60 million was not an impossible, and in proportion with 520 million of fiscal year general fund, it's not that much. But even if it's 30 million, there is a possibility of relief. We're not saying what the commission should do, but we're here to advise them and say that could impact your decision in millage rate. And by the way, look at other municipalities, they have lowered their millage rate. They were able to do it, and they were Republican, Democrat, they were a school board, they were Miami-Dade. So it's not impossible, and you can open your eyes to that. And I think we're not saying what they should do, but we are opening options. Because the reflex in government and even in the private sector is we need more budget to function. We are a bigger operation this year. So let's tax the residents more and we'll get more money. And I don't think that's the only approach. And I think we should show more perspective about it. That's the point D.
And then E, I think it's fair to say that BAB the city commission has to strongly look at moving forward with the concept of city hall being building a new building or a refurbish of an old building is either or is going to have financial impacts on future budgets. And there's still not enough information yet.
The board is yet to take official position.
Yeah, we're
That's all
not.
we can do with that,
Yeah.
or just leave it off, but just say, we understand this is a big deal, we are looking at, we haven't taken
And
it.
we've been asked to after the July meeting.
Exactly. So
We are looking to,
so
so
we
just
can,
touch on
we
it.
can actually, I provided a few slides that we show that we're working towards it. We're doing some research, and I would love to talk more about it because that's there, and I did some research, and there are some questions, but by July 2nd, we can finalize, but we show our approach to that and how much repercussion there is in terms of whatever the financing process, in terms of millage rate. So if you do a millage rate change, consider that because it has $20 million per year for 30 years repercussion, or 10 million, but those numbers are pretty realistic. So
Okay.
if you do a millage rate change, consider that in the overall approach. That's the message, no more.
Okay, so I think I have enough based around, do you want, Laura, you had a comment or?
Yeah, so I guess just to be clear, working from page 3 of the draft that member Calais put together, we'll work with the chair to firm up those points.
The five summary
And then
recommendations.
he'll present them back to the commission in the meeting. Is that the
Yes,
correct understanding? Is that this is the basis, and then the more conceptual framework will be presented back through the chair, and we can work with you on that if it's a couple slides or whatever it looks like. Okay.
Can I suggest, Chair, that the analytics that we have, I mean, that were taken in good, better, best, or my approach, they are not my analytics. They are just taking a lot of numbers, digesting them and getting the essence, the juice, the takeaway. If the commission has them printed, they can refer to it in details, and if they have questions or want to challenge our thoughts, we can be there to answer their questions.
That will be my closing remarks.
Thank you.
I agree. I think we all agree.
Sure.
Well, that's great. That's one thing we all agree on.
Consensus.
Okay. Any other thing before I close the special meeting? Melinda, you have any comments?
No, that's great. And Chair Brown, I agree with that approach, and I think with a slight rewording of the five or A, B, C, D, E being presented, trust you to represent us with that.
And as I said, the closing is where I'm going to take a little more deep dive and expressing how much time and commitment really went in. Just because you're seeing 5 summary recommendations, there's a lot of material that took to reach this in 8 months of hard work and deep diving, working with city staff to get to this summary.
So we're not presenting the backup, just sharing how much it went into it to get to these 5.
Analytics and the commission, so they can be heard.
Is that, do you want, what's the?
Ken, my only hesitation, again, I wanna believe is that the analysis seems like there's conclusions in there that I don't think as a group we've discussed and agreed to.
Okay,
And
so
that's both, and in addition, not only that, they both contradict each other. So if the commission ever deep dives, they're gonna be like, these guys aren't even on the same page. Not that they'll even do that, but I don't think we have a conclusive, and not that we can't get to that point, but we're not at that point right now.
So let me
everybody's on the same
make this recommendation.
I don't know that we can
Just-
send this to the commission.
We have time to refine that after and bring that to present at our 3rd workshop,
Which is in July.
August.
August. And tell them that we'll have additional analysis and backup to present to support these.
I don't wanna hold everything up, but I'm not,
And I agree, we're not there yet.
I don't think there's.
Especially with the millage.
What's that?
I think especially with the millage.
Yeah, well, we have
Looking
to
at what
decide in the next
Stantec-
meeting what our recommendation on millage is, so.
Yeah, so.
I mean, I'm
Exactly.
looking at Stantec's,
Staff, can you support that? I mean, do you think that's be able to present
I
that
think that's a reasonable
approach?
expectation to come back in August with something, once you all have had more time to talk amongst yourselves against what conclusions you'd like to communicate. I think that August is another opportunity for you to share any.
And may I suggest to my fellow board members to look at the analytics appendix that I sent, that OMB attached to the high level 6 slides. There is a separate document. If you look at it, you go through it, you can make your own conclusions or opinion and we can discuss it. But everybody has to do their homework and just come back with, you know, something like, I disagree and this is why I disagree, or can we change that wording? Because honestly, I've shared that 3 months ago.
Okay.
This is not a new document.
when is the decision being made on City Hall? Like, I know I think you said that they had asked for recommendation from us, but we haven't had a presentation
July
on it.
meeting.
They're going to decide what they're going to do, I think, in July, what direction. And then,
We are hopeful that they will provide some direction on July 2nd after receiving a presentation on the due diligence that they asked us to do, as well as we've been working on updating the interim agreement that was previously on the April 21st agenda. So I think we'll get some direction at that point, but we're not sure what that will be.
And also, I think the Mayor Trentalis is not there next week.
correct.
At our joint commission workshop, but he will be there July 2nd and in our August workshop.
When are we making our conclusion on the city hall and then on the?
We're not making it until after, we see what the commission, what
Not before
direction
August.
additional
After July and then we'll move to the village rate discussion that we had?
today. Okay. Motion to adjourn special meeting. Samantha, seconded.
Second.
Olivia. Okay, on favor, aye. Special meeting adjourned. I now have 5:10 PM. Chair opens up the regular scheduled meeting of the Budget Advisory Board for Wednesday, July 10th at can I get a roll call, please? Linda?
Oh, here?
Mr. Calais,
Here.
Mr. DeGirolamo.
Here.
Mr. Jeffress.
Here.
Ms. Metellus Thompson.
Here.
Ms. Milroy.
Here.
Mr. Ortolani.
Here.
Ms. Perriman Jones.
Here.
and Chair Brown.
Present. Have a quorum. Is there a motion or to allow Melinda Bowker, board member, to participate remotely?
So moved.
Moved by Jason, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Again, welcome, Melinda. For you, hopefully everyone's had the opportunity to look at the last meeting minutes from May 20th, 2026. Are there any additions, corrections, or comments? Chair, hearing none, is there a motion?
Chair, can I just note one item? So Jason indicated a change, so he had emailed us, so the prototype has already made the change. It's incorporated in the draft that was sent out. It's really changing Prospect Lake. It's reversing it. There was a difference due to the changing from Prospect Lake to Five Ash. It's the opposite, Five Ash to Prospect Lake. And so that change was already communicated back, but I just wanted to have that on the record, that it was a change from what was sent to them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to accept the minutes as amended? That would be an amendment.
So moved.
Moved by Jason, seconded. Seconded by Melissa. On favor, say aye.
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 Any disapproval? Minutes are approved. Are there any general members of the public signed up to speak this evening? Seeing or hearing none, there are none, so we'll continue on. Is there any old business to come before the board? I think we covered it in our special meeting. If not, we'll go right into the new budget, or the new business, which I would like to welcome. As always, our city manager, Raquel Williams, City Manager Williams, who will give us a update and her preliminary initial recommendations for the 27 preliminary budget that will be presented next week to the commission, and then have staff speak.
Stand next to you.
Oh, that's fine.
So, good afternoon, everyone. So going through this in my second year, it's a different flavor than it did in the prior year. Last year, we had some wonderful opportunities. We had a couple settlements that allowed us a little bit of cushion in our budget. We also had a decent level of growth. We were not fully enthralled in a conversation about property tax reform. And I believe that there was a lot more optimism in terms of what we would be thinking in the future years. This year, as I shared with the team, back in February at our budget kickoff, I asked the team to think in terms of being fiscally prudent, being resourceful, and being innovative. We've also discussed investing as opposed to just spending. And those guidelines, in my mind, set the tone for our budget development process. Now, I think some of our teams had a little bit of a challenge with processing the guidelines. And so what you've heard from so many of them are requests for enhancements and additional things in those decision packages. And, while all of those things have merit, we're in a different time. And so even some of those decision packages that were presented to you in the prior weeks, I'm not able to recommend all of them at this stage. We're having conversations about City Hall. And I know that this group is eager to take that up. No matter what the approach, whether it's a renovation for a new City Hall or a brand new build City Hall, there will be costs associated. And we have to factor that into our outlook for the future. Property tax reform, we don't know where it's going to go, but we are making plans. That in fiscal year 28, that's $17 million less. Fiscal 29, 27.3 million less. We're also currently at the table with our two largest unions, police and fire. Now, we've baked in a little something into the budget, but we don't know where we're gonna land with either one of those bargaining groups. So the situation is beyond challenging. It's extraordinary. And so much of it is out of our control at the staff level, some of it at the commission level. And so we're just trying to plan ahead for whatever may come our way. This budget is largely focused on public safety, infrastructure, capital projects, and those investments that we probably should have been making a while ago. We have incorporated replacement plans, not only for vehicles, but also for fire boats and, boats for our police department. We now have a plan in place for the out years, and we're not waiting until the boat falls apart to figure out that we need the budget for its replacement. In terms of public safety, as you may recall, we are looking at building a new fire station at Holiday Park. I'm recommending going to full cost recovery on the fire assessment, and I know Laura will talk a little bit more about that later. That will generate about 8 million or so. However, we're gonna need that because that's about what it costs to build that fire station at Holiday Park. And so going to full cost recovery is about a 10% increase. And while we are able to maintain the millage rate for the 20th consecutive year, it does not mean that there won't be other things that go up. Over the past several months, you've been working with us to look at fees, to look at going to full cost recovery on some other aspects of our operation, and you've been very supportive. All of that work is the foundation for where we're headed. And I appreciate that you've been very invested in supporting us along those lines. We also are looking at our Parks Bond program. I think we've discussed that a little bit here, and we've shared that with the commission in terms of how we want to prioritize going forward. We're putting a little bit of cushion in the budget for funding gaps that we anticipate will come in the future, about $3 million worth. Because we know that that initial bond number may not be enough to deliver based on the expectations of our residents. In addition, we're looking at some strategic reductions, and I shared with you that those mentioned were preliminary. Several months ago, I asked every department to do an exercise looking at how to reduce their budget by 10%. So every department came up with some ideas. We are still fully vetting all of those ideas, some more feasible than others. I think some departments took the assignment more seriously than others. And so the budget team is still going through that process to identify some of the strategies that we can utilize. Now, the initial ones that we've incorporated in the budget have to do with position reductions as well as budgeting for attrition. So looking at what the likelihood is of having cost savings based on vacancies within certain departments that are notorious for having some vacancies. We think that we can cobble together about $1.4 billion between the two. Now that might not seem like a lot. It's a starter in terms of our reduction strategy. We have several strategies in the works that we've identified that could be helpful to us in accommodating a city hall project. So what you may not see identified in this preliminary budget has been identified for fiscal year 2028 as potential cost-saving opportunities that could allow us to afford a city hall. Now, at this time, we have not yet put together an approach that incorporates both property tax reform and a city hall project, whether new or a renovation. So I just want to be very honest and transparent about that. We have done a lot of work in identifying some levers, and many of those levers, our residents may not necessarily see it or feel it, but the further we go down into this exercise of trying to accommodate both, that's the deeper we're going to have to get into those strategies that may have an impact that will be visible and felt. In terms of technology, our information technology team, they've come forward with several opportunities for us that I believe will help us citywide. I don't look at decision packages in a vacuum, and I know that whatever we do from a technology standpoint is going to help the whole. It's going to help every team operate better. In terms of our development services department, that's one of those departments that we're looking at to be a leader in terms of artificial intelligence. And so we heard you. We're looking at that in terms of being more efficient and allowing our team to service our neighbors and our stakeholders faster. And I'm looking back at our assistant director and he's nodding because he knows that's the assignment. Overall, I'll say that, a lot of folks have talked about the composition of our organization. We are a huge city in terms of personnel. We're a leader in Broward County, we're a leader in South Florida, and in many respects, we have been understaffed in some areas, and maybe we've been a little overstaffed in some areas. Last year, as part of our reorganization, we tried to right-size certain departments. There were some departments with over 500 people, and we weren't necessarily as focused. We're already seeing a lot of results. We're seeing more productivity, more accountability, and at least that's what I've been hearing as I've been going from neighborhood association to neighborhood association. Folks are sharing with me that they're seeing a difference in the way that our employees are responding and the delivery of services and projects. And so I still think we are in an experimental phase. We're not yet, one full year into our reorganization. So to Rich's point, we are taking a look at things, but we won't necessarily be able to judge until we've gone through a period of time where we can start to quantify and qualify some of the things that we've seen over the past couple of months. I'm really proud of our Office of Management and Budget. They have tackled so many departments, the big departments, the small departments, the new departments, the departments that are so old and stuck in their ways that they're not really wanting to shift and maneuver, but OMB has tackled them all. And I do want to thank all of our department directors and teams that went through the budget process. I delivered to many of them some bad news last week saying, you may have thought that this was going forward as a recommendation. However, we've had to make some adjustments since the time that you've presented to the BAB. And everyone took that in stride because overall, we're working as one city, one team. And I don't like to have winners or losers. I don't want to pick winners or losers. And so if a department was not able to have something recommended, it's not because that decision was made without a lot of thoughtfulness. And so for those things that we have put forward, it's because we really sat down and we thought, how does this push our city forward? How does this make us better? I will tell you that even with the position reductions that we've done, every department involved has been a team player. This year we have a net of 1 new position, which is pretty much in the clerk's office to enhance that team with all the public records requests that are coming through. But our team was really flexible and ready to accommodate changes because I think that's the season that we're in. And so if you're looking at this preliminary budget and you're saying, hey, this does not reflect where we're headed, just know that we have a running list valued at several millions of dollars in cuts, waiting to see how we're gonna fare in fiscal 28. What decisions will be made, whether by the commission or the voters. And we are getting ourselves ready to accommodate those changes. So at this time, I know Laura has a presentation, but I'll take any, preliminary comments or questions that you may have.
City Manager White, you mentioned all your departments working strategically and listening to you and making those decisions that you were asking for. The charter offices, you mentioned one that increased their overall charter offices budgets. How do they fare into the budget as far as being lean?
Okay, so we largely don't go through the same level of scrutiny with the other charter offices. The Office of Management and Budget, we receive those requests from those offices, and if we think we can accommodate it in the budget, it pretty much is something that we bake in. I never want to be the one to say, oh no, city attorney, city clerk, you can't have that thing. That's not my role. But I think that they've always been on the lean side anyway, and been very responsible, and maybe the team can share the history on that. But I haven't seen any requests come our way that seems out of the norm. But usually when there are reductions or cuts to be made, it comes from the administration.
Yeah,
From
and
the city manager.
I pose that question for some of the new members on the board who might not be
Okay.
in that process.
And just to give you a little bit of context, the team did request, all the departments requested about 90 new positions this fiscal year in totality, 90 new positions. And so the fact that we're at a net of 1, I think we did pretty good this year.
Are there any questions, Melinda? Who's got a question? Melinda, do you have a question?
No questions, Raquel, but that was a great summary, and thanks for kind of setting our expectations, on the information that you have now and what you guys will be preparing for, the future, that, you guys are going to be prepared, but obviously some of these items that will really be hitting the budget, we won't know for a couple months, or at least till the end of the year. So, no, great presentation, and I don't have any questions.
Jason, those
No
are-
questions. So really 2 questions in one. Can you give us a sense of, expectations? Obviously, you were preparing us to, we'll see more impact in fiscal year 2028 budget, if I understand you correctly, but you're already working on the foundation of that in fiscal year 2027, right? Can you share a little bit more of 2 things? Where do you think we're gonna land in terms of optimization, budget optimization? I'm not talking about budget cuts, but how many millions do you see as your target or potential, feasible objective for fiscal year 2027? And the other question immediately following is, what is that potential in 2028, and how do you actually increase, and where are the pockets of optimization? Where are your treasures and your gems? If you can share a little bit.
Would you like to know?
I'm asking the question.
So I can tell you that for fiscal year 2027, it's gonna be very difficult to identify, I would say even $5 million worth. It depends on the appetite of our body to exercise some of those changes in a year where we don't necessarily need to take the full plunge. We have put in some preliminary efforts. We have remained pretty lean with our asks. But I think in fiscal 28, our baseline right now includes at least about 15 million across all funds for a potential city hall project. 15 to 16 all funds, with a potential for 11 to 12 general fund. So that's sort of our baseline project. Now, if we're adding on property taxes, obviously, we're gonna need to find, if we're doing both things in the manner in which we think City Hall may go either way, we're gonna have to find another 17 million.
17 for the first year.
For the first year.
And 27 for the
Correct.
second.
Correct.
Okay. And the areas of gem and optimization, can you give us a sort of, I mean, is there more on AI optimization, service level, quality, more efficiencies? Where is your focus?
I would hesitate to use AI as, a bucket,
I was giving you an
as a
example.
model, but some of the areas that we're looking at is nonprofits, special events. We're looking at, I don't want to give you all the goodies, but definitely looking at our departments and how they're structured, whether we need to freeze positions. So there are lots of different measures, some of them a little bit more impactful than others. And we will get into that further as we get into the City Hall discussion, but I think right now it's a little premature. Just know that we have several models that we're working through.
And I have one last question for you. Is there more empowerment and support from this board that would, convince the city commission to give you the full power as you recently hired city manager? Do you feel that you can use our support and leverage to really exert more pressure and get more results in terms of optimization, or do you think you have already the maximum you can get?
Well, I think it's gonna be a team effort. This is a monumental change that we're potentially embarking on, and I think it's gonna take the BAB, it's gonna take the commission, staff, neighborhood leaders, business stakeholders, everybody coming to the table to say, hey, how can we get through this moment together? I've shared with our team that, we gotta buckle up, like the next 30 years, it's gonna look a lot different than the last 30 years. So this is kind of that pivotal moment in time where we really have to modify our thinking and our approach. And so I think whatever support the BAB can offer in ensuring that we're looking for the long-term sustainability of our city, we would definitely appreciate that.
Into your question, which was a comment, it was a great question, and there's still some unknowns too, especially if on the November referendum passes to create charter officers for police and fire, and how that factors into the budget process, because public safety, police and fire are the two largest departments on the budget.
To that point, Chairman, if I may.
And there's unknowns there.
Right.
To add to the conversation, I've heard from different commissioners that they can still consider those charter offices to be also under the management or the lead of the city manager when it comes to efforts. And so there's there's a day-to-day management and objectives and KPIs that the city manager can still exert while having charter offices. I think that's not an either or. I think it can be a smart combination. So let's keep that in mind as Bob in our dialogue.
Hopefully it continues to work the way the current
Exactly.
charter officers, but still some unknowns.
Well, what I've shared with the commission, and we haven't done a whole lot of homework on all the ramifications and the impacts. That's something that we're gonna be doing a deep dive on to prepare for whatever may be the eventuality there in November. But what I did share with the commission is that it will take a lot of coordination, especially from a budget development perspective. You know, I would want to ensure that our process is as seamless as possible and that the expectations on every side for every charter office is that we're working together to ensure that we're presenting a budget proposal that is in alignment with the long-term sustainability of the city.
Because they have to fit in those charter officers into that.
Especially they are
the-
big
the-
pieces,
the pie,
they are essential
The budget
pieces.
pie, right?
Absolutely. Half of the general fund.
Max, any questions?
Very good presentation. Matt.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you.
Looking for a teleprompter. Out there, I was like, what is she looking at? Good job.
Laura,
So Chair, do you mind if we present from
Go ahead.
here? We're gonna share a keyboard, so good evening, Budget Advisory Board, colleagues, Laura Reese, Director of Office of Management and Budget. First, I'd like to thank the city manager for her leadership through the budget process. If you all think it's a lot that we sit in here through your meetings, she's sitting through 16 meetings, minimum of 2 hours. And, you know, she does give us her undivided attention. It's a lot of hours and a busy schedule. So she's prioritized this, taking it seriously. We really appreciate that because OMB can't move forward and hit our deadlines without, you know, that leadership. Also under the leadership of Yvette Matthews. It is a team sport. My colleagues, the department directors that are here today, they've been not just in their own presentations and their colleagues' presentations, really supportive of each other, trying to come up with solutions as a team. It's been a heartwarming budget process, even though it's been a hard one. So thanks to everyone. I'd also like to thank my colleagues in OMB. Parth Patel has taken a leadership role this year. He's the guy who makes sure all the numbers tie out. He checks every zero, dots every I, you know, he's the detail guy behind the scenes, doing it all, working every night, every weekend, like so much passion for this job. Keith Burrell also taking a leadership this year, putting in a lot of work. He's had to onboard 3 new analysts this year, which is a lot of work during a really busy budget process. Just, you know, mad kudos to the team. We have our analysts, OMB analysts, do you mind standing up? They're here with us tonight too, like so much work behind the scenes, you know, want to give a shout out to the team. This is a little bit of where we start to just produce the budget and get out of the development process. So hopefully everyone feels some relief after that memo went out on Monday. So just wanted to start out with that recognition. I, in advance, want to recognize the city auditor's office. They work really close with us through the audit process. So really, again, it's a team sport. So wanted to recognize them. The Budget Advisory Board, I always say you're the hardest working board in the city. You know, this year, not only 14 meetings, you've had 15 now that you're going to have. It's a lot, you know, a lot of dedication. We appreciate that and your partnership with us throughout the process. So wanted to say thanks for that too. Where we are right now with the preliminary budget is an important spot, and a lot of cities actually don't do a preliminary budget. I work with colleagues from cities throughout the country, and we're one of the few cities that do a preliminary budget. And the reason that in the city of Fort Lauderdale, we've always thought it's really important is because before the city commission sets that maximum millage rate and all of the fees, the city staff has always felt it's important to have a really transparent process where we let them know what's included in those decisions. So they're not setting a maximum millage rate and then later we're telling them, oh, that means you're cutting X. We're letting them know in advance for the general fund what that means in terms of enhancements that they may or may not want and reductions. Charmaine printed out with the assistance of some of our team. We've killed some trees today, but we think it's an important use of the trees. So this is the preliminary budget memo and all of the attachments. As we work through the presentation today, I might point you to a couple of pages. If there's pages I haven't pointed to, please take the opportunity and to peruse the budget. It's really a transparent way of showing how the budget aligns with all of the city commission's priorities that they set in January, as we wrap up the process. So again, I'm gonna be presenting today with my colleague Parth Patel, and we're going to be talking about what's in the preliminary budget. From a BAB perspective, at the end of the presentation, what we ask for, or what staff would like is a recommendation on the maximum millage rate. The city managers made a recommendation in this preliminary budget of a millage rate to stay flat and a fire assessment fee, which we'll talk about at the end of this presentation, in preparation for your workshop with the city commission. We ask that you do a recommendation. You can choose not to, but that's something that if you wanted to weigh in and weigh in on, this would be your opportunity to do that with the city commission before they set that on July 2nd. So with that, I'll be reviewing with you the taxable value growth, the fire assessment, the rate adjustments on the tax bill, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Parth and he's gonna get into all the details with you of all the key changes. If you have changes, Chair, do you want them to stop us during the presentation? Is that okay with you? Okay, for questions? Yeah. Did I say something?
Changes.
Oh, I apologize. We're done with changes now. If you have questions through the presentation, please stop us and we'll answer those. So the first item is taxable value growth. And I'd like to point you to the second tab, or I'm sorry, the first tab, page 2. So there's a chart in this message that reflects the chart up here. And so the Broward County property appraiser provided us the June 1st estimation of taxable value. We're going to have to, in our adopted budget, use the July 1st budget or the July 1st taxable value. But for purposes of developing the proposed budget, because that's due in the month of July and the commission only meets once on July 2nd, this is the number we had to use for proposed. So there will be slight changes. But the property appraisers shared the news that over last year's ending value, the final taxable or the new construction was 1.73 billion and the final taxable value was 67.35 billion. And so that's a 7.16% increase over last year's value adjusted number. It's closer to 6% over what the budget number was. And that's going to generate $15.2 million in additional revenue for property taxes in the general fund. And at this point, with the preliminary budget, ad valorem revenues will make up 47.6% of the general fund revenues. So that's slightly lower than what the fiscal year 2026 amount was.
It's 48, right?
Yes. The next item that we wanted to highlight was the fire assessment update. The city manager talked about a lot of these items that are required. The cost of vehicles in the fire rescue department has gone up a lot, primarily due to inflation, cost of producing vehicles. That's one of the cost drivers. In addition, we have fire surveillance and backup power modernization that we're going to we're going to undertake this year. And then the $7.8 million full service holiday park fire rescue station that will be funded in the fiscal year 2027 budget, or is being recommended to be funded. That necessitates an increase of $41 on each residential property to get to full cost recovery. That's a 10.17% increase over last year's assessment.
Does that include, I know for the new communication system was already budgeted for the whoever the vendor is to upgrade the radio system. Is any of that cost factored into fire assessment fees, or is that separate?
That cost is not factored into the fire assessment fee. It's something that we have built into our capital program. And so the general fund funded a large portion of it, and we funded a small portion through the special obligation bond, but it does not factor into the fire assessment fee because it's used by so many different groups across the organization, not just public safety, but it's also our local government radio.
So now that we're going back to rebid that vendor, and it comes back, you anticipate there be any cost overruns in that bidding process now with some of the additional costs through inflation and technology?
So we're hoping that all of the initial proposers will continue to be very good partners in the process and will, view us as a favorable client, and we'll still come back with something in the ballpark of what we received last time. But we really won't know their final costs until we handle the liquidation costs.
And the over cost would have to come out of future budgets.
That's correct.
And any idea of how much that would represent?
Any overruns would represent?
Yeah, the amount of money, to give a number.
Oh, I wouldn't have a number. We have a placeholder in the budget, or we have appropriated in the budget now. I think it's about around $13 million. But
It's substantial.
yes, it is a pretty substantial.
I remember Stantec had estimated $425 for the fee. I just remember the number $425.
Yeah, me too.
Cited before.
So what happens during budget development is every year we have to share the actual costs by index code, which really some of them are split between, EMS services, some are fire rescue. So each year, at this point, when we have our preliminary budget, that's when we provide Stantec with the updated information, so they know how much we're budgeting, they know how much the fee needs to be to cover the budget. So we do estimates for future years, and it would be based upon assumptions. But then we true that up every year as part of the budget process, which is why there's usually a difference between what we assume and what the actual cost is. Last year at this time, we didn't even know about the fire rescue station at Holiday Park. That's something that came up, between last year and this year. So it's important to each year kind of update the assumptions and update the costs so that we know that we're not overcharging anyone. You can always charge less, but you can't charge more than what the actual cost recovery is.
And funny enough, the history was 338 and then we went down to 328, correct?
And yet, Olivier's point is 1 year we had to go down because the full cost recovery was lower than.
That's not the direction we're going.
No, so this year, we have some extra costs that we had to build in order to fund. And I would just add that, in our given environment where property taxes are at risk, this really helps to have a diversified revenue base in the city. And it serves us well in the long term to go to full cost recovery because that ensures we can continue to provide the services to the community.
And we're less dependent or reliant on anything that can happen to us,
That's correct.
including property tax.
Absolutely. So that's one of the
It's
reasons.
healthier.
Yep, that's one of the reasons.
So if I heard you correctly, it was 425 projected. Stantec was fire station Holiday Park. Okay, and then another point is a lot of communities don't have fire assessment fees. So when they build a new fire station, it's either through a GO bond or a revenue generating bond, or in this case, we're doing it within the budget, correct?
Yes, is it 3 years, Keith, that we put it over 3 years? Yep.
Study every 3 years.
So we program any new capital program over 3 years, so we recover the cost over 3 years, not just in that first year. But yeah, we didn't have this one built in.
So by doing this increase, it's more transparent.
Absolutely. Yeah, it allows for the cost of fire suppression to be trued up each year as a different fee, separate and apart from the millage rate.
The flip side is that if there is less visibility or predictability.
Right.
Budget.
Absolutely. So, any more questions on fire assessment? So the recommendation that we'll be moving forward is an increase of $41 or 10%. And so we wanted to share what that looked like at a high level, for a single family tax bill and the city's component. And so there's a few components that go into it. The first is the millage rate. For a property, so a single family home, the average taxable value of a single family home for the 2026 budget is $640,000. We wanted to use that number to be consistent because we're using it in some other places as well. But this is, again, is for a single family home, $640,000 taxable value. The city's millage rate of 4.1193, if we kept that stable and the 2.7% allowable growth under Save Our Homes would create a $69 increase or 2.7% increase in that property. Voter approved debt, because the taxable value went up, will go down because it's the amount needed to generate to make that payment for debt. So that debt rate will go slightly down by $6. Stormwater assessment, we've been talking about all of the new projects and what's needed over a period of time. 20% rate increase is required to support the projects needed for stormwater. That increase would be $75 per property per year. And then we just talked about the fire assessment increase of $41 per residential property per year, which is 10.2%. So the total increase would be $180 from the city's perspective, or city generated costs, or 5.2% overall increase for all of the different fees. And that equates to $15 per month if somebody has a mortgage. So any questions on what the trim notice would look like? I'm gonna turn it over to Parth, who will get into the details with you.
Thanks, Laura. And now we'll pivot and we'll go over what's changed since the adoption of the FY 2026 budget. But before we dive in, the next few sections are kind of data heavy, so I'll be focusing on really major variances or new initiatives that are being proposed, but feel free to stop me along the way if you'd like to dig in. Something in particular. All right, starting off with key general fund expense changes. Since 2026, we've seen an overall increase of $33.9 million, with salaries and wages being the largest component at $14.6 million, and a transfer out to support our capital projects at $6.9 million. And if we shift our focus just a little bit to the expenses, to the expense changes by function, our public safety is seeing an increase of $17 million, which is our current largest driver.
How much of that is overtime?
We can get you that information back. It's not, yeah.
Libya, would you just like public safety overtime or overtime?
Well, on that item specifically on public safety, I already asked for last year's overtime per department, and I got that, and I incorporated that in my analytics. But on that one, I'd love to know how much it's predicted to be, because there was an adopted and then there's a real. And we've seen in past years that the actual is superior to the adopted. So that's the visibility I'd like to have.
I can conceptually answer that question. So for overtime, we take last year's budget and then we increase it by what the wages are going to go up by. So if, for example, in fire, it's contractually mandated where we have a 3% step and and then another 4% COLA, we're going to increase overtime by 7% because overtime is gonna go up by the same amount that wages are going up by. So that's how we budget. The actuals are based upon use and how they're responding to events during the year. So we can get you the amounts, but conceptually, that's how we built it.
Got it.
For public safety, Olivier, for fiscal year 27, for police and fire, we're budgeting 15.7 million in overtime, which is a $1.3 million increase from the previous year.
Yeah, okay. Because police had, from memory, 11 million in adopted, and fire is relatively stable at 4, but police used to be half of that a few years ago. Just as a commentary for Mike, Philip on that.
Just a really technical question. I've always been familiar with the term PAYGO capital, so I assume the 6.9 million is the same thing as PAYGO. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so PAYGO or, cash funded capital is what we transfer from the general fund into the general capital fund because it's tracked into that. So that's why we show the transfer.
So two questions very quickly.
Sir.
Use police, fire, pension, insurance premium. That's not health insurance. As you think of insurance, it's retirement. Why do they call it insurance?
Oh, that's.
You-
So, as part of property insurance and your car insurance, each resident in the city of Fort Lauderdale pays a tax. And that tax goes into the general fund and is then transferred into the pension plan. So for property insurance, it goes to support fire,
So that's fine.
pension. And so that offsets the city's annual required contribution as part of our agreements with the unions.
And then in this proposed budget, there's no transfer going this year to the emergency reserve fund.
There is, but it's lower, so Keith, you wanna speak about the rule for the emergency reserve? So this is Keith's baby in some way.
So based on the integrity principles that were adopted by the commission, the goal for the emergency reserve is to have it at 1% of the general fund operating budget. So this year, we just had to take the variance to get to that 1%, which I think it's around 600,000 this year that we're transferring. And then hopefully next year, our goal is, fingers crossed, we don't have any emergencies, and then that money through pooled investments can start keeping up with the 1% increase. So this year, there is a $600,000 transfer to the reserve.
But what's the running balance? I mean, it's like what's the amount that we have? I mean, it started last year, I think it was 188 from City Manager Williams, right?
So it's 4.8 million for 2026. So
Okay.
for 2027, you had 600,000, be like 5.
Okay, okay.
And for the new members, are you familiar with what we're talking about as far as there was some money came in from a lawsuit settlement
PFAS.
and right, and then we made a recommendation with the city manager to create a
Special.
emergency reserve fund for natural disasters, floods, hurricanes. It could even be environmental if there's environmental hazard that happens and that the city has quick access to those funds to mitigate that disaster and then wait until maybe some of it might get returned from the federal or state government. Okay.
And that money generates interest, I suppose.
So, is that what you're saying, Keith? So you're hoping that, fingers crossed, next year that investment pays on itself and it's not gonna be out of a transfer again?
What's
Keeps
the
rate
av-
that 1%.
What's the average return expected? In your assumptions?
We can send you the last quarterly investment report that has all of
Just,
it.
okay, just to,
Great. There's no other questions on expenses. We'll move on to revenues. For revenues, we've seen an increase of $38.8 million from 2026, the largest increase being an ad valorem revenue at $15.2 million, and the fire assessment fee that Laura was talking about a little bit earlier at $8.4 million. And the other notable increase that occurred is in franchise fees and utility services taxes that equated to about $7.9 million. So with that, we're seeing approximately $4.9 million in available funds to support key city initiatives for 2027. And there are no questions. We'll be transitioning to see what these investments are, starting with public safety and enforcement. So in totality, it's about $16 million has been appropriated for this investment, $850,000 for new community initiatives like the new harm reduction and opioid overdose prevention program that primarily focuses on Narcan placement throughout the city. The expanded group violence intervention program, which focuses on individuals at the highest risk of gun violence, connecting them with targeted services to reduce harm and make neighborhoods safer. And the last one is funding for new public safety aid traffic program. And this is just to increase coverage at schools on a rotating basis throughout the year. And the next category is personnel, which equates to about $1.1 million or as well as 6 FTEs. The first one focuses on nighttime code enforcement coverage enhancement, the 2 FTEs. The goal being from increasing coverage from 4 to 6 nights per week, addressing peak periods and increased demand on a daily basis. The next one is for 2 fire inspectors to ensure safety of structures and strengthen our code compliance as well as our inspection rate within the city. The next one is 1 support services bureau manager, and this is to help shift sworn personnel from having to focus on administrative duties to go back to core public safety operations. And the last one for personnel is an ocean rescue captain. This will provide an additional oversight and support for like enhanced beach operations as well. And we'll kind of go into the equipment a little bit later when we talk about the replacement plans. But for now, like the equipment that's supporting public safety and enforcement is about $13.9 million. The 3 big highlights here are the $8.4 million for replacing 81 public safety vehicles, which includes like 3 of the big fire pumpers, big dollars there. $1.3 million for the new marine response vessels for both police and fire, and then $560,000 to expand our license plate readers citywide.
So heavy investment. What kind of life cycle or are we on this kind of replacement of equipment? Are we at a peak, or is it like a recurring amount that we can expect?
So
Do I make myself clear?
yeah, so actually posted and I'm really excited for you guys to go on the website and see this because we worked so hard on it. If you look on the website, there's a preliminary budget and all of the replacement plans are posted. And it'll show you the totals for each year, and they're actually in the backup packet as well. But by way of example, like a police Tahoe, we had a 7-year replacement.
Okay.
They're having a lot of issues and they shared with you, they wanted to move to 6-year. That's one of the things the city manager is recommending to avoid all of the extra downtime and police officers being out of service. So in the new plan, we're having each Tahoe or each police vehicle replaced every 6 years. So what we'll show in the plan is the year it needs to be replaced and the estimated cost to replace it in that year.
And that leads to a total replacement of the fleet of how many years?
Well,
Do you know how many?
different vehicle classes get replaced on different cycles, and for instance, vehicles that operate on the beach because they're exposed to salt
Okay.
water get
What's
replaced.
the average?
I would say it's
5 years, 6, 7 years?
probably
7
seven,
years.
7
Okay.
or 8.
For cars, for
Yeah,
like a pumper, it's gonna be like
How
20,
about the big,
right?
the
So
beautiful fireboat for the chief of police? How often do we replace this?
It was a 10-year replacement. I believe it was a 10-year
Instead of fire,
replacement.
for the fireboat, how many years?
Oh God, it's been a while since we got the last one. The fireboat's a funding issue. We'd love to make it last, but it's, I'd have to go look and see. what we got
10
that
years,
last.
okay.
But we keep them a lot.
Just a notion.
It's 10 years.
Yeah, thanks.
If I'm not mistaken, that fireboat was originally right after when they started Homeland Security funding, that regional fund after 9/11. So it's what, 20, almost, it's probably about 20, close to 20 years old maybe.
Yeah, well, so the new fireboat has been replaced. We got through the grant, that was since I was here, I've been with the city,
2017.
yeah, so it's like 2017. But what they did was they took the boat that was replaced and they kept it. And that was their backup boat, so now the city manager is adding 1 additional boat so that can serve as the primary, and then they'll have a backup. Because they were using a very old boat to be the
That was
backup.
originally, I think, purchased with that.
Perhaps, so the backup one was purchased that way, correct, yeah.
Just to add, we are hoping for a state appropriation to go through with the governor. That will give us about 700,000 to offset the fireboat. So without that, we would have been looking at around 1.4, 1.5 for the fireboat.
If there are no more questions, we'll go into our next investment initiatives, which is homelessness response. This totals about $14 million that we're allocating, about $3.7 million for the general fund support. Out of that 3.72 million is going to this department. 2 big initiatives here. 1, shelter bed access program that we've already had, but the city manager is also expanding access to like an additional 15 shelter beds to the Broward Partnership Central Homelessness Assistance Center in the amount of like $250,000. And then we're also adding a Rotary Connection bus, which is a dedicated bus service in partnership with Rotary Connection to provide transportation and relocation assistance to those who are experiencing homelessness. And then on the grant supported side, we have about $10.5 million, 8.3 coming from our housing opportunities for persons with AIDS or HOPWA, for facility-based housing, rent programs, and like mortgage assistance, $1.4 million in SHIP funding, our state housing initiative partnership to prevent homelessness, and then $640,000 in home investment partnerships to prevent homelessness, and $130,000 for a community development block grant to fund local organizations to assist with homelessness programs.
Was any of this increase due to state funding for any of these programs? Loss of revenue from?
I don't believe we saw significant increases in Aqua or SHIP funding. Forth is shaking her head
No, I
now.
don't.
And for every member of this board, and I always struggle to answer residents' questions. Most of them assume that the county is doing most of the traction and the work on homelessness, and that the city is adding. Can you put that into perspective? We have those, this contribution for the city. What's the amount of money from the county that we receive or that they dedicate to homelessness and that the city benefits from?
So we don't receive a direct allocation from the county. There's a group called the Continuum of Care that the county operates, where a lot of the state and federal funding flows into the community for homelessness response. They typically fund a couple key and primary organizations like Broward Partnerships Homeless Assistance Center and other organizations in the county that support homeless initiatives, but I don't believe the city gets direct funding from the county for these efforts.
But we benefit from that
We do.
within the county. To what extent?
We do. So what we try to do is we balance what we're funding as a city with what the county and their resources are funding related to homelessness, so that we're not duplicating efforts. But we understand in Fort Lauderdale that we have a significant homeless population, an issue that needs resources beyond what the county is pumping into the city and the facilities that are within the city of Fort Lauderdale.
I understand, but to put it plainly, is that a 50-50? Is that a 70-30? Is that a 80-20? In the end, what's our pressure or contribution compared to what the county is providing?
So I couldn't tell you today, but we can.
Even in large
that up.
percentages? I
Yes,
mean,
yeah,
I'm sure it's not 50-50.
It's difficult to say. Again, a lot of what the county funds is related to the Broward Partnership Homeless Assistance Center. That's the bulk of what they fund here in our community, but I couldn't tell you if it's 50-50.
I'd love to get a better visibility of that if that's possible later.
We did receive one item in the state budget, $250,000 for substance abuse and mental health housing treatment. So that is one item. It's still pending, the governor's final approval.
Chris, refresh my memory. What is the percentage overall count, the county versus the city? I know we have the largest population within the county, but what is that percentage,
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I think our unsheltered population the last time was in the 600s. Other cities that are close to us are probably less than 200, so.
But what's the overall county number,
I just know our number. Yeah. Probably about 50% of.
Okay, if there are no more questions, then we'll go to another area of investment, which is our sustainability and waterways initiatives. And we've allocated about $14 million here, $3 million in sustainability initiatives. The two big highlights here, other than the current service levels that we're funding, is the urban forestry program, which we've given enhanced funding of the $200,000, which aims to enhance tree coverage citywide and achieve about 33% canopy coverage by 2040. as well as the subterranean termite treatment plan, which comprises of a comprehensive termite treatment and forest protection plan. And the next area for public enjoyment of waterways.
I just looked up the point in time count for Broward County in 2025. It was 2,636.
The city was 615 same year.
Okay, so 25% more. Is that accurate, Chris? They seem to be nodding.
2,000 might be the total homeless. There's also the unsheltered population. That's really what we focus on. So I think that number is a little bit less than 2,000.
Okay.
We'll get that.
Okay, thanks.
And then just a quick note, we adopted the urban forestry master plan. A lot of comments from certain individuals within our community said, but we're not doing any funding. But that's just the opposite of what they're saying, because this year we're doing 383,000 for that urban master plan.
Canopy.
Yes, okay.
Next for like.
We point that out for YouTube video viewers.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. And next is the public enjoyment of our waterways. Some of the new initiatives, as we've talked about already, which equates to about $11 million, but some of the initiatives that we've talked about already are the new marine vessels for both our public safety departments. And the two other new initiatives, one is the waiver of the living seawall permit fees, which is a new increase incentive program to offset permit fees for residents and businesses. And then the last one is a waterway trash skimmer, which is to enhance our canal cleanliness and improve water quality.
City Manager Williams, do we have a Chief Waterways Officer or we don't?
We will very soon.
Okay, because we had one for a second, right?
We had one for about a year
Oh,
and he
okay.
decided to move to North Florida with his family. And we have had our deputy public works director filling in for the majority of those duties until such time as we onboard the new chief waterway
Is
officer.
it gonna impact, is there an amount of money on this position over there, or it's somewhere else?
So it's already a budgeted position,
Okay.
so we're not adding it to
So, but remind me, it's within which department?
public works.
Public Works, okay,
It was in the city manager's office at one time.
right. Thank you.
Great. If there are no questions, we'll move on to something that the city manager was talking about earlier, like a key theme in our budget process and as well as the manager's message, is proactively preparing for the future. And this is just a snapshot to show all of the efficiencies that have been gained through the process all the way up until now. About $3.2 million in revenue enhancements. And this goes from increasing our fire ambulance transport fees, relooking at how we do interest earnings, as well as an increase in our business taxes. And some of the balancing strategies that the manager was talking about is reduction of the 6 vacant positions, which yields about $770,000 in savings, as well as payroll attrition in areas where we've had a history of vacancies of $650,000. That gets us to a total of about $4.6 million in efficiencies in this budget cycle.
How much is that 650K payroll attrition likely to evolve the year after and the year after? What's the trend?
So this was developed based upon looking at the prior 3 years. So we've budgeted only in police for attrition in prior years, but the reason we did that was we allowed for flexibility to hire at different salary amounts and hire on day one in other departments. In doing this, it limits the flexibility of departments, but it also, realizes savings to the budget, which is something that was important to us. So it should be year over year, a consistent approach moving forward, because we implemented this based upon history.
But it's gonna be a similar amount every year, or it's
It would
gonna
go up.
increase?
It would go up based upon salaries going up.
And is it something that you build into the Stantec model?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no questions, then we'll move on to just quickly looking at some of the snapshot of our capital improvement plan. In 2027, we're appropriating about 36 projects, about $23.2 million. And a bulk of that, again, we talked about the Holiday Park Fire Station, another project that is for the Parks Bond project to address any funding gaps. And another notable one is the electrical improvements at the New River Docks, as well as some seawall replacements that are scheduled for. And then kind of looking out into the out years in 2028, we're looking at about 24 projects, but at $18.3 million. A few notable ones here are like Holiday Park improvements, a lot of street improvements, as well as the water tower lighting project. 2029, it's about 20 projects at $27 million. The bulk of that is a bridge replacement, as well as some funding for Los Olas Mobility. For the Los Olas Mobility project. And then 2030, we have about 17 projects at $31.7 million. And here, like, we're really funding a lot of seawalls as well as bridges program for that year. And then 2031, which rounds us out at 17 projects as well as $28 million, again, focusing on infrastructure and for bridge and seawall replacements. And lastly, the presentation really is just looking at our replacement plans. Overall, citywide, our replacement plans look to be about $26.2 million. 21.3 million going to our fleet, which includes all funds, but 10.6 of that goes directly to the general fund. The fire rescue department gets about $1.9 million for fire rescue equipment. For our police department, it's about $1.7 million. And some of our smaller replacement plans yields us about like $1.2 million and total replacements.
If I could just chime in for Olivier's good. So if you looked at tab number 8 by way of example, it's a really detailed plan. It'll show you vehicle by vehicle for the next 5 years. What's going to be replaced, the replacement life and the cost of it. So
The question of life cycle. Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
so it'll have it vehicle by vehicle
Thank
for
you.
your editing.
The police animals, are those combination of the horse patrol and or mounted patrol and K9?
That's correct. Yep. Yeah, there are no questions. We're at the end of our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Linda, do you have any questions?
No specific questions. I kind of digesting everything, but overall, I would just say, I know the budget focus has to follow the priorities that the city commission laid out. And so I can see how you've, tried to definitely focus on those, particularly public safety, still with some focus on homelessness, infrastructure. I see the focus on sustainability in the waterways. So I think we're in line with at least the increases being within the priorities laid out by the commission in January. But no, great presentation and taking it all in.
Thank you and staff, all department heads, great job.
What happened to all the old equipment? I'm just wondering, what happened, when we replace the equipment, what do we do with it?
We usually surplus it if there's some value there. Sometimes we have other organizations that may wanna purchase it from us.
Yeah, and especially for our vehicles, part of their auction value is what funds the new vehicles. So we use that value to buy the next vehicles, which is why shortening their lifespan sometimes yields more auction replacement value.
Right. And all the makes and models are right there.
What you want.
It's very detailed, yes.
And we have all of the budget packets that you all saw. They're all posted online. We really try to be super transparent so that the public knows where the funds are going.
To that point, is the widget about the balancing act gonna be still, live soon or?
I love how much you like that. So what happens?
I think it's
once-
not about me, it's about transparency towards our residents.
No, absolutely. So what that's based on is the proposed budget. So we're almost there. Between preliminary and proposed, there's a couple of things that change. And then we'll upload the proposed budget for everyone to weigh in on, because that's what the commission is going to be voting on. So proposed budget goes out July 2nd. So at that point, we would have the data needed.
But also, were you looking at maybe improving some of the features? I mean, there were some comments made last time about the widgets and how it could be a little more educational in some areas. Okay, looking forward to it.
And one of the things we heard from you all last year is that you wanted to be able to, as a group, have a scenario where you all could share your feedback on balancing act. So we'll make sure that you have your own dedicated scenarios.
We'll have a session around that.
Live though, because it has to be in the sunshine, so it'll be a live session.
Great, thank you.
Is it possible for our next meeting to just get a count on how many reviews of these documents are currently posted on the?
We can check with our webmaster, I believe they can track that.
I don't know if they're called clicks or
Yeah.
reviews or how the terminology of that, but it'd be interesting to see how much the general public's actually looking at it.
About that or about the widget?
Both.
Okay, because I think the widget should get more traction and viewership if it's really designed attractively and easy to manipulate. And I think I mentioned that to City Manager Williams before, promoting that through Stratcom efforts, through social media, to have more engagement, because obviously the engagement we got last year or the year before was very disappointing considering our population of 90,000 residents. So I think everything to, promote that and to create more engagement and transparency through our balancing act will lead a long way. I mean, we're advocates for our residents. We can hear them. We can also refer them to that. And I think that's full circle.
Is there any other new business that come before us? Okay, moving on the agenda, I think we covered in our special meeting, the joint city commission workshop preparation. And part of that, the communication to the city commission, which will have to communicate our position on the fire assessment fee and fire billage. I think staff to the presentation has covered the fire assessment fee fairly well. Is there any what's the position of the board as far as the increase proposed on the fire assessment fee? I'll open it up for discussion. Recommendations. Melinda, I'll start with you.
So I would be in favor of the BAB being in support of the fire assessment increase. I know it's a 10% increase, but they showed the I think the amount increase per calculated on a I guess 640,000 taxable home was about $41. So anyway, that I think we should be in favor.
Start with Melissa, just go around the room.
I would be in favor of fire station at Birch State Holiday Park. Yeah. Thank you. I don't think you ever really have a choice, honestly.
Need.
I'm just thinking about it.
Not in favor of an increase.
I'm in favor, but with a message attached to it is that you have to look at it in light of the rest of the increase on the residents and other fees and potential millage rate increase. It doesn't live alone. It's not self-standing. From the resident standpoint, it's part of the taxation, and we need to keep it big picture and full, 360 vision. And I think that's a message that the BAB should echo to the city commission while being in favor of it and recognizing the reality and the need of it.
I just think that real quick, I think that it does, it reduces the over-reliance on millage being the only lever. So.
Agreed, but putting in the perspective and in the overall picture, from the residents' point of view is key from the BAB perspective, and I think we should really remember that every time we say, oh, yes, I agree with that. It's an example. I think that's what I can read from your eyes.
Being that I did that whole report on affordability, and it's every time I see an increase, I'm like, how much more is this going to be on the residents? So that's my hesitation.
Then, but every 3 years, there's an.
There's a new study to look at the methodology, so every year we true up based on cost, we have to look to make sure we can justify the rate or what rate we could justify. But every 3 years, we do a whole new study to look at the methodology to make sure it still complies.
But to keep things in perspective, remember that it used to be 328 2 years ago. I mean, 338, it went to 328, and now we are at 444. That's a reality of, I have my trim notice, and that's what I see on my homestead property. I'm in District 1, and I'm not in one of the poorest districts, and I'm not, on the lowest range of affordability. So I think we need, as BAB, as voice of residents, to keep that into the picture and not look at buckets separately. This is part of the taxation of our residents.
Chair, with that, can we look at all of these increases together? Instead of just voting on one at a time, so we can kind of see how this overall impact resident.
What do you mean, the millage rate and?
Right, the millage rate, the
Stormwater,
all,
fire assessment.
right, so.
But I put some index and some slides in my appendix, if you want to refer to it. That are, numbers that I took from public information, I didn't make them up. And you can see the overall taxation beyond the 41193 equates to, for a property like mine, which is an average house in District 1. And it has an impact of 1.43 on top of the 41193. So the compound tax rate is that. So if we look at it holistically, we are realistic about what the residents pay. Not, the fire assessment we should increase. The stormwater assessment we should increase. And I think that gives us a real picture of the reality of affordability and pressure on our residents.
And that's
And I might ask, it's kind of putting you on the spot, but just the 328 was how many years ago? 5?
No, 3 years ago.
That's when we dropped it to 328.
Well, I have my trim notice, I can answer that question. I have 338 for 2024.
Was it
2021?
You have that number? This is a
328, 2025.
right, fiscal year 25.
So this was not long ago, and we were at 444.
But just going back, say 5 years ago, the cost of a pumper compared to what a pumper is today, a cost of an aerial or tower ladder or aerial truck, what it would cost 5 years ago versus what it costs today, and what it costs to build a fire station
Fair enough.
5 years ago.
Fair enough.
Yeah, just to put it in perspective for us,
Yes.
please. Chief, could you kind of give that quick comparison of?
Yeah, no, it's more than doubled in that time period. Fire trucks, when I first went to administration as a deputy chief, I've been up there now going on about 7 years. A pumper was $330,000. It's north of $1 million.
And we buy American.
American, yes,
They're all made. Yeah.
they're all made in the US.
We don't buy German because at some point I thought they were.
And the shipping costs would make them way too expensive.
Yeah. So buy American,
They're
make
American made,
it less expensive than it could be.
but most of the fire trucks are American made. And we do go through a competitive process and vet these fire trucks. We're not buying the most expensive. There are fire trucks a lot more expensive than the ones that we're buying.
And an aerial ladder was 750,000, now it's what, 1.5 or plus million. And the cost of a fire station, when we first started building those stations, under the
It
initial
was
bond,
$250 a square foot.
today,
Today it's 600.
But remember all that we're trying to better procure, to better negotiate everything in light of this inflationary trends. So let's not, let's be realistic, but also let's be even better at reducing costs.
2% today. Jason?
I agree that it's important because of revenue diversification and this particular budget supporting the city's growing fire and EMS needs again. It adds to the logic.
So,
I really like the support you.
okay, so having heard from the board members, is there a motion on the floor to accept the proposed increase in fire assessment fees to the amount of $444?
So
moved by Jason, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Max. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
I'm sorry, Chairman, could we add an addendum to that in favor by, I know it might seem, kind of posturing, but it's not. It's really provided that the commission recognized the importance of keeping that in perspective with the rest of the taxation on residents and potential millage rate policy changes. I think that was the point I was trying to make, and if we can have that in our point of view, I think that would make it more complete and more representative of our discussions.
I'm up to first staff. Is that something that can be put in the communication? As
That you
tie that to the, okay.
and to put, so you recommend the fire assessment to be $444, provided that the commission keep in context.
Of the overall pressure on residents stem from other levers, other fee increases, and potential millage rate impacts. And I would second that.
Yes, it's not an amendment, it's part of the original motion, so yeah, okay, very good. Roll call vote.
Ms. Bowker?
Yes.
Mr. Collet?
Yes.
Mr. Teacher's gone. Mr. Jeffress?
Yes.
Ms. Metellus Thompson? Yes. Ms. Milroy?
Yes.
Mr. Orlani?
Yes.
And Chair Brown?
Yes, and please note in the meeting, the two members had to leave prior to the vote. Yes, thank you. Recommendation passes. Next item of communication is the proposed millage rate as proposed by the city manager. Recommendation to keep the millage rate same for the 20th consecutive year. Any discussion? Linda?
I would support keeping the millage rate the same and having the board communicate that.
Seeing no hands of any board members, Chair will entertain a motion to accept the proposed millage rate to remain the same for the 20th consecutive year. So moved by Jason, seconded by. You got the second.
Second.
Good. Yeah, we will call vote.
Ms. Bowker?
Yes.
Mr. Collet?
No.
Mr. Jeffress?
Yes.
Ms. Metellus Thompson? Yes. Ms. Milroy?
Mr. Ortolani?
No.
And Chair Brown?
Yes.
So pass 5-2.
5 to what?
2.
2. Is there any other communication to come before the board to the commission at our meeting next week? In case the chairs ask, are the 2 no votes, in case the commission asks, is there any communication as to relate to your no votes? They sometimes want to know.
I think we could be more aggressive, that's all.
You mean an increase or decrease?
Increase.
Increase. Okay.
And I think we should be open to both ways and keep it in flux and reserve our opinion as a BAB to seeing the elements that are unknown, such as property tax reform, current City Manager Williams' work towards this budget and City Hall layer. So I think it would be, from my perspective, reckless to recommend a stable millage rate at this point from the BAB, and that's why I voted no. So I would vote possibly yes, but this is way too early, as we said it, beginning of our session, the previous session. And I think we should be prudent and we should reserve our judgment on that question.
Don't you also think though that based on Stantec's,
You might want to speak up. So
don't you think that based on what Stantec is gonna come, that going forward, or I mean, it's gonna have to be, hard looks gonna happen.
This is another unknown that we should be for. I don't think this, I think this recommendation should be still wide open and we should be a little more reserved pending all those unknowns to have an informed opinion as BAB. That's why I voted no.
Can I interject one piece of info? So the commission has to set the maximum millage rate on July 2nd, so they wouldn't be able to wait to know all of those things. Just wanted to make sure I put
and that's governed by legislation.
because over the summer, we'll have to communicate that in order for it to be on the term notice.
Meet the time deadline, yes.
I understand, but those are,
Roll back, yeah, so they can set higher and roll back, but they do have to set an amount to go on the term notice.
those are important decisions that affect a lot of people and that have lots of repercussions. And we're playing with City Manager William said, with lots of, she didn't say it, but I would characterize as there are lots of juggling and different balls in the air. And so I think making a recommendation out of that fluidity is not very wise. And I think as BAB, we should reserve our judgment at this point.
Are there any additional points well taken, by the way, both of your comments? Board member comments? Closing before we.
No, I just think that when you're speaking about the Stantec report, that we had, like, you're reserving judgment. We have seen what it looks like going into 2028 and 2027, 2028 and beyond. So to Max's point, I think we do have to look at what they're recommending. I mean, we get that report, I think, the presentation in January typically. December, whenever it comes.
But precisely, you're saying something that I agree with, but I go the other direction. If we save money, we don't have to, it's not inexorable that we have to increase millage rate. So we don't know how much money we can save. And City Manager Williams is still working on this. And we're already going to the reflex. We need more money. It's inevitable. So let's increase the millage rate. And by the way, how much should we increase the millage rate for the next 3 years? Because we have City Hall on fiscal year 2028 and 29, and possibly for the next 20, 30 years. So we're really making, recommendation in the blind. And I don't think that's wise from the BAB to have an expert opinion or recommendation. I think it would be wise for the BAB to reserve judgment and say to the City Commission, we don't think we can have a real informed position on that for the moment. And we encourage you to look at both ways, not only increase, maybe stabilize and keep it as it is constant for the 20th consecutive year, or maybe give a potential relief if we can do so, pending the savings and the possibilities coming from the leadership of City Manager Williams. That's my position.
Before we adjourn, let me just say, we can't overemphasize enough the thank you to the department heads. I mean, it starts at your level when you start developing, working with OMB and the cooperation to build a budget, and working with the city manager and under her guidance and meeting the priorities set by the commission and strategic planning and thought process to prepare us for the future. I think this year for the new members was some challenges, especially what we're going to be communicating to the city commission next week, and then ultimately come back with additional at our July or August meeting. 2028 is going to be a more challenging year. And as a city manager, there's still a lot of unknowns, and I think we're going to, at least we got a foundation that to start building upon that has not, that's since my time as chair of the board, no city managers ever brought forward that type of foundation, and I commend you for that.
And I would echo with, it's a very exciting and interesting year and time to be a board member and to be involved and to help shape an opinion or a consensus that adds value and is not only saying, great work, yes, let's continue. So I think we need to find our voice, we need to do our homework, and we need to keep the residents' voice at the center of our mission. That's why this board was created, not to just be, echoing what the staff does or says.
And every 4 districts has their each individual challenge.
Absolutely.
We have to be respectful of that because the income levels of certain districts are not what others are.
Absolutely.
And the affordability for the renters.
True as well.
And the fact that our population grows, doubles daily just from people that come from other parts of the county that work here in Fort Lauderdale, that we have to absorb those costs.
True, but we also have residents, and I know some people in my district and other districts who actually raise children and were themselves born in the city and can't afford the city anymore. And they're on fixed income, they are below level, and they're being chased out of their hometown. And that is a trend we can't ignore. So I think that's part of the equation, even though we can, be sensitive to renters and transients. But the foundation, the DNA of this population, the people who created the city, who loved it, who raised it, they raised their children, had their job, their career, and now are on fixed income, retirees, grandparents, and they can't stay in their home. That's a dimension we need to never forget.
But then renters, who will make up the majority of people that live in the city and work here.
I'm not
take on
choosing,
the
I'm
burden.
not choosing, I'm saying we can't forget a category of population that has
Who
been
already
the
own a home.
foundation of this city.
All points well taken. With that, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second,
I have
sorry. So moved.
Favor aye.
Aye.
Adjourn. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chair.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna.
Okay.
So we can go to.
It's
It's all been.